I think we're looking again at a lost technology. And it was this ancient apocalypse 12,800 years ago that wiped that from the human memory banks almost completely.
The Sahara Desert, a vast sea of sand, has hidden its secrets for thousands of years. This land of legends once hosted ancient empires and is steeped in mysterious tales carried by the winds. What has the Sahara kept hidden all this time? Join us as we uncover 20 shocking secrets buried beneath the sands of the Sahara Desert. Number 20. Pure oxygen stone. In school, we're taught all about the three forms of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. Turns out that was all just one big load of BS, because now we have a solid made of a gas. Try and explain that one, my friends. Go ahead, try and find a logical explanation. In 1990, geologist and archaeologist Angelo Pittoni was in Sierra Leone looking for something. Hey, these people look for all manner of things. I'm not going to wildly speculate. He discovered a strange blue stone which he named the Sky Stone. He immediately sent it to the research lab because, well, he just found a weird blue rock. For the next few years, the stone went through tests and labs worldwide, from Switzerland to Tokyo. The findings just didn't make any sense. Its composition was 77% oxygen and trace elements of carbon, silicon, calcium, and sodium, but mostly it was pure air. The stone had been found in soil layers dating back to at least 12,000 BC, and it's unlike any rock ever found in nature. So naturally, scientists have jumped to the conclusion that it must be manufactured or artificial. But by whom? That's a great question. According to the experts, it's likely been created by a highly advanced civilization lost to time, who said the Eternals were fictional. Number 19. Palace of Ramses II. You'd think that by now just about every hidden treasure of ancient Egypt would have been discovered. I mean, we're centuries on at this point, but nope, things are still being discovered even today, and they're not small. In March 2019, an excavation team from New York University was looking around the ancient Egyptian city of Abydos when they found the unimaginable, a hidden palace. But there's another twist in this remarkable discovery. It was already discovered 160 years ago. Actually, back then archaeologists thought they'd found the full temple, but they were wrong. In fact, there was a hidden stone walkway that led to the real temple, a secret royal palace right next to the temple of Ramses II. Was this palace the home of the pharaoh back in the day? Probably. I live in the modern day, so I have no way of knowing who lived where back then. There was no prehistoric architectural digest, sadly. The archaeologists were obviously thrilled with their find. I mean, when was the last time you found the former home of an Egyptian monarch? I rest my case. They don't tend to list them on Zillow in my experience. Number 18. Mysterious stone structures. Every culture throughout history seems to have a strange love of inexplicable stone structures. But that's not even the weird part. The strangest side of all of this is that nobody, absolutely nobody, has any idea what the heck they're for. These stone structures were discovered in Western Sahara, an area of the planet rarely explored by archaeologists. So when they happened to take a look around, they were surprised to find hundreds of these formations, which appeared to come in all shapes and sizes. But other than the knowledge that they date back thousands of years, nobody seems to know what they are or why they even exist. No matter how much close-up investigation they do or satellite images they take, experts are no closer to deciphering the mystery of the stone structures. So feel free to take your wildest guesses. The odds are in your favor. History is a strange thing, that's for sure, and it seems increasingly unlikely that we'll ever know why humanity has such a weird obsession with stone structures. But hey, we have evolved to develop the ability to make wild, unprovoked guesses, and I guess that's better than nothing, right? Number 17. The human dog. And no, we're not talking about the people who like to dress up as dogs and, do things. We're talking about something weirder than that, if such a thing exists. Yeah, my friends, we're about to take a look at a literal human dog or something close to that. This footage was captured in South Africa and apparently shows a strange half-human, half-dog-like creature racing down a track with two other animals, and that's about as much as we know for sure. The mystery of what exactly this animal was continues to this day. Even animal experts were said to be baffled by the seemingly impossible creature running around the track. But people on the internet, well, they had all manner of theories. Was it aliens? Mutants? The end product of an insane mad scientist who wanted to merge the dog and human worlds? Your guess is as good as anybody else's. We'll never know for certain what this creature actually was, and for some people that's probably a good thing. For all we know, this thing could be pretty dangerous. Maybe it wants to destroy the human race, and let's be honest, we're doing a pretty great job of that all on our own. We don't need the help of some weird new species. Number 16. Tong Child. Generally speaking, we as a species tend to try and forget that there are many people buried beneath us. But some jobs require you to be constantly thinking about it, or at least some people seem to thrive on that kind of sinister knowledge. Anatomist Raymond Dart was one of those people. Back in 1924, Raymond was exploring Africa when he found something curious hidden within a lump of rock. Upon closer inspection, he found that it was a tiny fossilized piece of skull and brain. When he investigated even closer, he found that the remnants belonged to a child that appeared almost ape-like with some human traits. The Tong Child, as he came to be known, turned out to be a groundbreaking find, the first Australopithecine ever found. The find turned out to be so surprising that many anthropologists who were searching for humanity's origins across Europe and Asia totally changed their focus, shifting their attention to Africa. And that turned out to be a pretty solid decision, given how much we now know about humanity's history and where life began. Turns out, much like our keys, the secret to finding humanity is to go searching in the last place you'd think to look. Number 15. The Lost City of Quinning. Back in the day, you needed an Indiana Jones-type adventurer to discover a lost city. But today, we don't even need humans. After all, we live in a high-tech age of AI and Spotify. Okay, Spotify isn't relevant here, but it's still pretty cool. In 2018, archaeologists in South Africa were using laser technology to scan an area outside of Johannesburg. What they found was not what they expected. Of course, I have no idea what they were expecting, but I'm pretty confident nobody ever expects to find a whole city. The laser tech discovered an ancient city known as Quinning, which dates back to the 15th century. This settlement was at one time home to around 10,000 people of the Tswana ethnic group, and today their descendants are doing their best to get the city recognized as their ancestral homeland. There's no way to know if they'll succeed or not, but regardless, the discovery of the city's ruins is incredibly important. Very little is known about life in pre-colonial South Africa, but ruins point to an entire culture that has its own socio-political structures and economy. That means they were pretty much thriving before the Europeans turned up, and this city just proves it. See, you don't need an Indiana Jones when you have Indiana drones. I'm not even going to apologize for that joke. That's solid. Number 14. 120,000-year-old clothes-making tools. It's not uncommon for archaeologists and other professionals to find hundreds of thousands of years old tools, but even for them this one is a pretty impressive find. These archaeologists in Morocco found one heck of a treasure trove in a smuggler's cave. At least that was the name of the cave, the Contrabandier's Cave. The international team of archaeologists had discovered a bunch of clothes-making tools fashioned out of bones. Yes, bones, human bones, animal bones. I'm not sure I want to know. When they began their research on the finds, they found that the bones dated back some 120,000 years, making this the oldest set of clothes-making tools ever to be found. Now that is one heck of a great find. Did they go on to use the tools to make their own clothes? I doubt it, but boy, would that be a pretty cool hipster flex. So how did people make clothes 120,000 years ago? I don't know for sure, but if they were using bones as tools, I feel confident in saying that it wasn't easy. In fact, it sounds pretty damn miserable depending on where they actually got the bones from. If they were family heirlooms, yikes. Number 13. Little foot. I can't speak for you, but I would probably run in the opposite direction if I found an abandoned foot buried in some rocks. But then, maybe that's why I'm not a professional anthropologist, because those guys, when they find a foot, they get super excited about it. In the early 90s, anthropologist Ron Clark was exploring the Sterkfontein caves with his team when he stumbled upon, you guessed it, a foot. Well, actually, he found 4 small Australopithecine foot bones, but that was enough to get him excited. It wasn't until later that he and his buddies found a nearly complete skeleton embedded in limestone, which belonged to the foot. The skeleton was soon known as Little Foot, and it immediately became a big sensation in the scientific community, who saw that this specimen had some characteristics not seen in any other known species of early man. However, here's the fun part. The scientific community can't seem to agree on how old this thing is. Clark and his team were clear in saying that it was likely 3.3 million years old, but other scientists who claim to know better insist that it's more like 2.2 million years old. Does anybody else want to take a guess? If you don't have a science degree, I'm pretty sure it'll be all right. Nobody seems to know anything at this point. Number 12. The Miracle Tree. Throughout history, there's always been talk of witches and wizards. Does that mean they exist? There's no way of knowing that kind of information. We could all be under a memory loss spell for all we know. However, people in Nigeria are of the firm and unwavering belief that yes, they exist, and they really seem to like trees. This village in Agbor is utterly convinced that witches and wizards hold their meetings beneath this very tree. How could they possibly know that, you may be asking? Well, they really don't, but they've just decided that's the truth and they're going to do something about it. You have to admire their community spirit at least. Still, what happened next probably just strengthened their beliefs. After getting the equipment in order to tear down the tree once and for all, They were shocked to find that the tree just refused to go down no matter what. This community just could not uproot the tree. Scientific minds will say that the tree simply has strong roots. Still, the community remains absolutely insistent that this is the work of witches and wizards, maybe even demons. Who's to judge? Even demons have the ability to cast spells, or so I hear. Number 11. South African Stonehenge. It's bad enough that we can't make heads or tails of the British Stonehenge, but now we have to contend with an African version. Honestly, starting to think that humanity's history is just never going to make any sense at this point. Maybe Scientology knows something the rest of us don't. Help us, you know? This bizarre structure has occasionally been referred to as the oldest man-made structure in the world, but that label is, well, controversial. However, it's probably not too far off the mark. The so-called African Stonehenge actually predates both Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid of Giza by tens of thousands of years, so it's currently much older than many other old monuments. According to scientific investigation, the standing stone circle is probably the last standing example of a completely functional, mostly intact megalithic stone calendar in the world, which is probably not a title many other structures are fighting for today. There are an estimated 100,000 stone ruins in the area, with most of them connected by a whole network of channels. But it doesn't end there. This whole grid of ruins is also immersed in a big old mass of ancient agricultural traces. Yeah, a lot of big words are being thrown around here, my friends. Do I know what they all mean? Sure. Number 10. Blue Eye of the Sahara. Depending on your philosophical perspective, either X marks the spot or a bullseye marks the spot. But in the Sahara Desert, a big old geological formation marks the spot. It just happens to look like a bullseye. And with that formation, oh boy, you truly won't believe what's buried under the Sahara. For centuries, the Blue Eye of the Sahara was known only to a few local tribes. But by the 1960s, the Gemini astronauts took photos of the unique formation, having used it as a landmark to track their landing sequence. According to geologists, the Blue Eye of the Sahara is a geologic dome containing rocks at least 100 million years old. Some even date back to a time before life on Earth existed. Of course, it's more famous today for its bullseye-type appearance than the actual rocks and gemstones within. But hey, we live in an Instagram world. If it's not good enough to be photographed, get the hell out of here. The Blue Eye of the Sahara is nothing short of a unique natural wonder, and considering its impressive age, you have to admit that it's doing pretty well for itself. Right? Apparently, being surrounded by crystals and rocks is amazing for the soil. Little tip for all the dermatologists out there. Number 9. South African Geoglyphs. It doesn't take much to set off the conspiracy theorists, I'll give you that. But mysterious spiral shapes carved into the ground, well, that's pretty much a big sign saying, come and wildly speculate, and wouldn't you know it, the conspiracy theorists came out to deliver. These geoglyphs are crafted in the ground of the Karoo region of South Africa. But why? No idea. Conspiracy theorists, however, have plenty of ideas. They believe that whoever designed these shapes probably also had a hand in the shapes carved into the Nazca Desert. I think you can read between the lines to figure out what they're really implying here. Aliens or just very, very artistic hipsters who like to go all over the world, find remote places, and make big inexplicable shapes. Honestly, that could actually be more plausible than any other scientific theory we could find. Nobody knows who drew these geoglyphs or why, but there's certainly something to admire. They may not be crop circles, but, well, actually, the conspiracy theorists have also suggested that they could be some kind of extraterrestrial crop circle. Of course they did. But the actual scientific truth is we have no idea what the heck is going on here. But what do you believe? Number 8. Lac de Gafsa. You could, in theory, visit any country in the world and find some weird man-made attraction. But when it comes to finding natural oddities, it seems like Africa is the go-to destination. What more proof do we need than the Lac de Gafsa? The Lac de Gafsa translates to mysterious lake, which is a pretty uncreative name for a mysterious lake but an accurate one. One ordinary night in 2014, a group of desert shepherds were working in Tunisia when they discovered this bizarre lake, which, by the way, had appeared overnight with absolutely no explanation. According to scientists, a minor earthquake had ruptured the rock above the water table, releasing millions of cubic meters of water to the surface. But if you're not scientifically minded, that probably just sounds like one big explanation for something much, much simpler, aliens or God, but mostly aliens. Ever since that fateful night, the lake has become one of the most popular tourist attractions in the country. People flock from all over the world to dive in and feel the cold rush of an inexplicable lake. But the origins of the lake are just one big question mark. So what do you think happened to create this lake? Are the scientists right? Or is there some other explanation? Let us know in the comments, and remember, it was probably aliens. Number 7. The 7 Colored Earths. Art, novels, cinema, they have the unique ability to transport us to other planets, other cultures. But why lose yourself in art when you can simply travel to Mauritius and lose yourself on another planet here on Earth? May I present one of the strangest and most unique tourist attractions on Earth, the 7 Colored Earths. This tourist attraction is unlike any other, but it can be summed up like this. It's a big pile of sand dunes with some unique colors. Worth the price of admission? That's for you to decide, but it's definitely an unforgettable experience. The dunes contain 7 colors: red, brown, violet, green, blue, purple, and yellow. The unique phenomenon is caused by the cooling of molten volcanic rock at different temperatures, resulting in this rainbow-colored sand. And what's even more amazing is that the colors don't mix together, even after heavy rainfall, as if the sand particles instinctively know how to stay separated. But the sight you'll see on a visit may vary, because as the sands settle in different places and layers, the sands take on a surreal, ever-changing set of stripes. It's never the same way twice. The irony, of course, is that this may well end up being the closest we get to seeing an alien planet, and it's here on Earth. But if you squint and put your fingers in your eyes, you may be able to drown out the humans. I mean, people will give you looks, sure, but if you go through life with your fingers in your ears, you'll never have to listen to their judgment. Number 6. Gyi Ruins. Welcome, my friends, to the Ruins of Gyi. These ruins are, of course, a historical monument, as are all ruins. The only difference is that these specific ruins are among the most intensely studied in the world. At least that's the state of things at the moment. You see, for much of history, the ruins had pretty much been ignored. But then the colonialists turned up and that all changed. By the 1920s, the ruins were rediscovered, and people wanted to know anything and everything about these historical artifacts. Over the next few decades, the ruins became the subject of ongoing excavations and studies, and the findings were fascinating. It turns out that Gyi, back in the day, was one of the most important Swahili trading centers of its time. Between the 11th century and its abandonment in the 17th, it seems like this was pretty much the place to be, a rising hub of activity and prosperity through some very tumultuous periods. Like many ruins, there's a heck of a lot that we probably don't know about Gyi, but what we do know tells us that this was at one point a fascinating place to live and maybe even a central hub. Today, though, it's a big pile of abandoned rocks. I don't recommend people buy real estate here, just a free tip. Now it's time for subscribers' pick. A shocking image has surfaced on Reddit showing what appears to be an enormous, metallic, disc-shaped object unearthed deep beneath the sands of the Sahara Desert. The photo, shared by a user who claims to be connected to a team of scientists, has left the internet buzzing with speculation. Many believe it to be the remnants of an ancient, otherworldly craft, buried for millennia beneath the desert. According to the post, the discovery was made during a geological survey, when construction workers accidentally stumbled upon the colossal object while digging. The image shows researchers and workers alike standing in awe around the massive, rusted disc, which some theorists suggest could date back tens of thousands of years. Speculation is rife, with theories ranging from secret military technology to proof of extraterrestrial contact. While scientists have yet to make any official statements, the photograph has ignited widespread debate, leaving people wondering, what else could be hidden beneath the Sahara's vast, shifting sands? Number 5. Giant Creature Cemetery. Now, this is an interesting one, and the conspiracy theorists among you will absolutely lose your minds when you find out more about it. Because this group of anthropologists happened to stumble upon one of the most inexplicable and insane finds in history. While exploring the jungle near the Central African city of Kigali, Rwanda, the anthropologists found a mysterious burial. The remains there, however, didn't look anything like humans. For one thing, they were all too tall, around 7 feet. Their heads were disproportionately large compared to their bodies, and they had no mouth, nose, or eyes. Try to explain that one. Complicating things even further, the remains were buried at least 500 years ago, and there are no signs of human existence anywhere nearby. Are you starting to jump to any conclusions yet? The head of the group certainly did. According to them, the whole thing has all the hallmarks of an extraterrestrial troupe. Yes, this is coming from a professional anthropologist. They claimed that the remains may well be the result of a catastrophe that killed visitors from another planet, most likely some kind of virus the aliens weren't prepared for. But as yet, no remnants of a spacecraft have been found. Conspiracy theorists go wild. Number 4. Lake Natron. There's a reason that so many artists tend to paint lakes. They're peaceful, picturesque, and just generally romantic places to be. Unless you happen to be in Tanzania, home to one of the most toxic lakes on the planet. How toxic is toxic? Lake Natron, enough said. Scientists have actually named Lake Natron the most caustic body of water found anywhere on the planet, with many animals unable to survive anywhere near it. The lake's extreme alkalinity, caused by the high concentration of sodium carbonate, can burn the skin and eyes of animals that are unlucky enough to come into contact with it. Even birds that attempt to land in the lake often meet a grim fate, their bodies calcified by the salty waters. The lake's temperature can reach up to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, making it even more hostile to life. Apparently, the high temperature and high salt content make it inhospitable for just about every living creature on the planet, though some have managed to evolve to survive. I guess that's like how humans evolved to somehow stomach Coca-Cola. In fact, this lake is the only regular breeding area in East Africa for around 2.5 million lesser flamingos. Bet you didn't see that one coming. Still, the difference between this toxic lake and others on the planet is that this one is pretty clearly toxic. I mean, look at it. It's bright red. What else do you want? A big sign saying, stay out? There are many lakes all over the planet that are toxic, but Lake Natron is in a league of its own. All things considered, it's not often that you find a lake that could kill almost every single animal on the planet. That's impressive in a weird, twisted way. Number 3. Human-like species. Throughout history, it seems humanity has lived and thrived in our caves. Today, those caves look like houses and apartments. The cave drawings have been replaced with flat-screen TVs and intrusive, privacy-destroying social media apps. But more or less, things are the same as they've always been, maybe. Turns out that everything we know about human history is open to interpretation, or at least has some notable gaps. A group of scientists discovered 15 partial skeletons in a cave in South Africa, and it pretty much changed the game in terms of what we all knew about our history. You see, these creatures were uniquely part human and part ape, and the scientists believe that the species, now known as Nality, could represent the bridge between the two. But it's not just the reassertion that evolution actually happened that is the shocking part. It's that the finding confirmed that these creatures may have been capable of ritualistic behavior, the kind of stuff scientists assumed were seen much, much later. But no, it turns out that humans have always been ritualistic creatures. We just kind of evolve and adjust as time moves on. So, take that, science. I'm joking. Obviously, science is too smart for me to understand. Gravity will punish me. Number 2. The Osun Sacred Grove. Free tip here, my friends. If you happen to visit a tourist site and you're advised to always go with your guide, you should do that, especially if there happen to be monkeys nearby. Those things are just absolute menaces, and you should never be left alone around them. Case in point, the Osun Sacred Grove. This little site is hidden away in the dense forest of Osogbo, but man, is it stunning. According to the locals, this site is also the abode of the Yoruba goddess of fertility, Osun. It's also one of the last remaining sacred forests in the region, as urbanization has more or less wiped them all out. Man, urbanization is even taking down the gods' homes too. Earth just can't catch a break. Despite that and a host of other desecrations, the grove is still standing and is still considered the spiritual home of Osogbo. UNESCO has also seen the incredible value that the grove has on the region, naming it an official World Heritage Site in 2005. Today, the locals continue to rail against any and all efforts to knock the grove down or turn it into something else. As far as they're concerned, the only person who has the right to take the grove down is Osun herself. Number 1. Fairy rings. Sorry to disappoint all you onion ring fans out there, but you can't eat the fairy rings. As a fellow foodie, I was just as disappointed to discover that. All that disappointment aside, the fairy rings are kind of a mind-blowing discovery, and the local lore behind them is even more fascinating. If you were to take a spontaneous trip to the Namib Desert, you'd probably expect to find only 2 things, sand and rocks. And you'll certainly find plenty of both. But you'll also find these hundreds of tiny, perfectly round spots of life. What's even more curious is that the rings are found in clusters, sometimes stretching for miles across the barren landscape, making them all the more mysterious. Some scientists believe that these circles have been forming for thousands of years, adding a layer of history to their strange appearance. Others have suggested that termites play a role in creating the rings, tunneling under the ground and impacting vegetation patterns from below. The local lore behind the rings claims that they were created by gods who just happened to leave behind their footprints when they returned to their homes. But scientists have obviously disputed that claim, instead stressing that these seemingly random circles are actually created by the specific rules of nature. You see, the desert is so arid that water is scarce, forcing the plants to compete for resources. When a plant expands to form a thriving patch, the nearby smaller plants can't get the water they need to survive. So the farther from the center of the patch, the more vegetation you find, Hence the fabled fairy circles, or, if you would prefer, the footprints of gods. It's really up to whatever you believe. For those who've traveled to Africa, what's the strangest thing you encountered? Share your experiences in the comments. Don't forget to check out our other cool videos appearing on screen now. See you next time.